So I have the distinct honor of being able to facilitate the first session, How to Grow Examples of Excellence in Your Institution and Community. And this really builds on the conversation we started last night. For those of you that are able to join us for Celebración de Excelencia, even if it was virtual, I think there was a lot of energy and zeal, the opportunity to bring together people who are making a difference every day, that see and support the kinds of students like Teresa, who are giving of themselves, even in these changing contexts, to make sure the privilege and opportunity they have is given to others. When they see there's an opportunity to take action and make a difference, they're doing that. And that's the profile, that's the element of Examples of Excelencia, which is a program, that initiative we started 15 years ago. It's almost crazy to believe. There was a time when, so much deficit conversation was going on about our community, but there's such good work that is going on day in and day out. So the purpose of this conversation that we're going to have today, and starting in a minute, is really to talk to those practitioners, those that are making a difference, of the many. I will say for 2020 Examples of Excelencia, we had over 220 nominations, over 110 profile submissions, and we had to narrow down to 20 finalists from such good work that was nominated from across the country, from over 30 states, DC and Puerto Rico. And I had the good fortune of having some of our staff and colleagues with us. I want to make sure to mention Jesse Hernandez Reyes and Adriana Rodriguez, that read every single one of those profile submissions and helped us figure out how to identify some of the programs that we want to bring attention to you today, of the many. We know that just one session is not going to do justice to the critical work of these programs. So I would suggest to you that you take a look. Yesterday, we also released our compendium, our annual compendium, What Works for Latino Students in Higher Education. There's more information about each of these programs here. And frankly, even these one-pagers don't do justice to the kind of work that's going on. But it's just critical that you are able to see what's possible. There's contact information for every single program in that compendium. We hope that it's this community of common cause that continues to share and engage with each other about what makes a difference for our students, and make sure there's no excuse for not taking action, that double negative, that there's every opportunity to take action for our students. So that's the context. With us for this session, we have the four examples of Excelencia, one at each of the levels we recognize, the associate, baccalaureate, graduate, and community-based organization level. They're going to be engaged in this conversation with us today. So I'd like to introduce them, and then I'd like to just get into the conversation so we can really start hearing more about what they're doing to make a difference. I have my list that apparently went away. Let's see if I have it here. So first, at the associate level, we have Mi Casa, Su Casa, a program that's at Lone Star College in Texas. And I have it here. Yes, thank you. And at the baccalaureate level, we have the Asems program that's at University of Arizona. At the graduate level, we have LLI, Latinx Leadership Initiative, that's in Boston College. And at the community-based organization level, we have Scholars Program at Generation Hope. With that, we have joining us the representatives from those programs, and we have a summary of some of their work. But I'd like to just get into it, and in doing so, we're going to uncover a little bit more of what they're doing. So if I could just have the four of you start us off. With this, we have an august audience that's listening to us. I'd like to get started. If you could highlight one thing your program is doing to increase Latino student success, what would it be? I'm going to start with you, Laura, and would share with us a little bit about Mi Casa, Su Casa. Of the many things you're doing, what's one thing you would highlight?
Okay. Good morning, everybody. So I'm going to cheat and say the one thing we're doing is that it's not just one thing. So one of the things I think that really has been part of the great success we've had with Mi Casa is that it's finding that one way for each area of the college to really connect more deeply with our Latino students. And so what you see is a host of initiatives and a variety of activities that are all common in one purpose. How do we further connect and support with our Hispanic students? And so I think it's really about a mindset of looking at each area of the college and looking for those connection points and opportunities, whether that's through advising and transfer, whether it's through pedagogy. It's one thing that really best suits your area.
That's important. And I know that as I found my notes here, that part of this, you're at a community college, you're connecting folks to the local campus community and making sure that they're connected to the academic world as well as staying connected to their personal world, which is a powerful way of focusing on the aggregate. I appreciate you cheated a little bit in calling it a little bit of everything. We're going to get a little deeper into that, Laura, but thank you for saying that. Maybe Kimberly with the Asems, Arizona Science, Engineering, and Math Scholars Asems program, University of Arizona. If you could highlight one thing of the many things you're doing to share with us to get us started, what would you share?
So as well, we have a package of 4 strategies that work together. They're intertwined, so you can't just take one. But we have first a team of relatable mentors who are from similar backgrounds and experiences who deliver culturally responsive, strength-based mentoring, validating students' cultural backgrounds. Second, we engage students early on in STEM career experiences, such as undergraduate research. We provide a structured learning community where they have students from similar backgrounds going through these cohort courses together. And fourth, in all of our activities, we communicate messages of belonging, focusing on their strengths, and growth mindset. So it's those all together that work together to build this community and sense of belonging for students.
Thank you, and I appreciate that both of you talked about holistic approaches, which is so critical. Students are not one-dimensional either, and the ability to serve them doesn't require that. Thank you for sharing that. We're going to get deeper into that as well. Rocio at the Latinx Leadership Initiative, LLI, in Boston College School of Social Work. If you could highlight one thing to get us started to share with those who are watching, what would you share with us?
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Deborah, for that question. I would highlight the cohort model that we have. What do I mean by that? We have professional students. We are forming professionals. They enter BC as a cohort. They meet each other before they come here. So they already are a group before they come here, and then they go through the program as a cohort. I'm gonna give you an example. We have foundational classes on the curriculum. They take them together by themselves and in Spanish, which is something that we were the first one to do in the country. Why? Because that brings a sense of belonging, and because then they are gonna be working with the communities mostly in Spanish. And then that same cohort goes to the field agencies where they are gonna do the social work, and the cohort we maintain the cohort because the people that are working with them in the agencies are alumni. So they are always wrapped around by a model where they are always accompanied. And finally, in the sense of the cohort, we completely change the curriculum. You only see examples of evidence-based practice in social work that work with Latinos, rather than the deficit perspective that was customary in social work.
Right, all 3 are game changers as we think about what it takes to serve our students. So thank you, Rocio. That's a powerful way of taking a look at cohort models as well as other holistic approaches. That sets us with the Graduation Hope and the Scholars Program. Nicole, Lynn Lewis, who's with us here, the founder, if you could share one thing that you would highlight about the many things that are happening at Scholars Program, what would you bring attention to?
Yeah, I think it's a difficult question, as the panelists said, because at Generation Hope, we too are very holistic. On any given day, we're helping students with proofreading an English paper, or overcoming a domestic violence incident and helping them to get to safety. So we really believe in supporting the whole student and their child. But one thing that I think is really central to who we are at Generation Hope is that we have built and enhanced our programming over the past 10 years, really based on direct feedback from our scholars. And that has allowed us to design resources and supports that are authentic and rooted in their lived experiences. And, we really consider our scholars the experts, and we want to listen to them and craft programming that is really catered to their needs. We've added components to our programming, such as our career readiness programming, our mental health supports, supporting both parent and child through early education programming, as well at Generation Hope called Next Generation Academy, all of that by listening to our students. But a more specific example would be our Summer Bridge program. And 90% of our Latino scholars are first-generation college students. And our Summer Bridge program has allowed us to ensure that they start that critical first year strong and really have a successful first year in college. So we developed our Summer Bridge program in response to their feedback and by listening to our frontline staff, those who are working directly with our students, and really crafted something that is authentic and designed to meet the unique needs that they have. And I think it's really been important to help our students with that transition.
Thank you, Nicole. I hope as you hear these highlights, there are some common threads amongst them. We started off getting straight into it about what things they could highlight. There's so much more about these programs, which our colleagues kind of started off with. So I want to get a sense from each of you about what evidence of effectiveness do you have that what you're doing as a program is serving our Latino students? So not just because you've got wonderful testimonials, but what data, well, that is data, by the way, there are data, are you using? And what I'd like to do is maybe start with Kimberly, but I also would like to just make sure, since I didn't begin with this, to share kind of a one sentence on the program and then ask you to kind of give me a sense of your evidence of effectiveness. If that works for each of you, because I think I'm asking you to highlight, I apologize, I didn't get into, so what is it you do? And that was a good reminder. So Kimberly, with what you shared with us, Asems is providing support services towards graduation for underrepresented, majority Latino undergraduates who are STEM majors. What kind of evidence of effectiveness do you use to show that that effort is making a difference for your Latino students?
So we, of course, look at retention. But one thing that we especially pay attention to is how many are persisting in STEM fields. And so as you mentioned yesterday, we have of our Latinx STEM students, 93% are still retained through their fourth year and 81% are still in STEM. And that's pretty consistent stats for our program. We also look at the students who enter. How many of them have had any research experience previously? How many of them are interested in graduate school, so that we can kind of look at the difference that our program makes? And so with our students, after they have after they've taken our research readiness course, we have, you know, depending on the year, about 65% that end up getting into research experiences or internships or some type of research position, but at least by their last year. And but their interests, you know, we have like 87% who are interested in getting research experiences. So so that's one of the evidences. And then also we are always asking the students, you know, how is the program making a difference for you? What are the most important elements of the program? And for them, it's this sense of community, it's the peer mentoring, it's the exposure to research, and it's the one-on-one support from the staff. Yeah. So that's what.
And you track those on an annual basis or semester?
Yes, we do. Well, we do pre and post tests for each of our courses, surveys. We have an end of the year survey, and we have a sense of belonging survey and focus groups.
Very rich, woman after my own heart. Love all that data. But it ultimately culminates with what has happening to our students, and the retention numbers, especially given what we know about STEM nationally and for underrepresented students, is incredibly powerful. Thank you, Kimberly. For the Latinx Leadership Initiative, and I appreciate Rocio pointed out, generally goes by LLI. I have to remember that. I always want to say the full name of the program that's in the School of Social Work. You train and support Latino bilingual Masters in Social Works and PhD students to transform how the social work profession works with Latinx communities in the United States, which is such a critical mission overall. And there's, you know, people don't often think about social work and the difference that it makes. How do you, what evidence of effectiveness do you use, Rocio, to know that your efforts are making a difference for Latino students and others?
Thank you. We have two sets of data, quantitative and qualitative. So we look at graduation, retention and graduation, but we also have every single student identified since the very first cohort. as they are professionals. We have a database that we constantly are updating. And so we know where they are working. We know where everybody is. And then that's the quantitative. And for instance, let's say one student, enter deciding to do the 2-year program, but then life comes. We switch that to 3rd year or 4th year, and we are constantly checking where those students are. So we do a one-on-one follow-up that is quantitative. And then qualitative, we have we have our seminars, so that we have every month or every 2 months where we check with them constantly. Then we have an end of the year, of every year. How are they doing? Things that we can change. That is constantly, we are constantly gathering qualitative data from things that they want to change. I'm gonna give you an example. This year with the virus, the students that are in the 2nd year cohort said, hey, the 1st years are coming, and Jimena and you with the virus and everything, they are gonna need something else. So they themselves proposed to create Unidos, where 2nd year students and alumni are one-on-one mentors with the incoming cohort. That's something that just kicked off this year, because the 2nd year students said, with the virus, you're gonna be overwhelmed, Jimena and you. So we are taking on, and they are doing the Unidos.
That's a powerful use of some qualitative data, but by the students themselves, and taking action based on the data they see in front of them. Very powerful. Thank you, Rocio. That's helpful. Nicole, your program empowers teen parents, a majority of whom are Latino, as you mentioned, to attain a college degree, professional success, and economic stability through multiple efforts. And you kind of mentioned some mentoring, emotional support. How do you know that what you're doing at the Scholar Program in Generation Hope is making a difference? What evidence do you use to show that?
Yeah, so we use many of the traditional routes that some of my fellow examples have cited. We gather data through assessments, pre and post surveys. We also do record reviews, looking at transcripts, looking at GPA, looking at retention and completion rates. But we're also measuring things like healthy mentoring relationships. How often are they touching base with their mentors? Are they meeting regularly? Things like that. We keep a dashboard that has real-time results and outcomes and indicators that is available to leadership and to the board, so we can make real-time decisions and see how our scholars are doing. And we also disaggregate data by race and ethnicity, and that's really important as we're thinking about all of the students that we serve. The less traditional things that we do, we have a Scholar Leadership Council, and one of the jobs that they have is to sit down with us and look at our data at the end of every semester. And they review it with us, they provide insights, feedback, and recommendations. So they're telling us if we're seeing we're behind in a certain outcome, they'll say to us, here's what my experience was, and here's why this may be happening. And that's been really important for us, because we're on one side of the fence, and so we may have some ideas about why students may not be hitting the mark in a certain area, but they're the experts again, and so that's been really helpful to us. We also kind of, a less traditional way is we have so many of our scholars who, by word of mouth, are recommending other students to our program. We consider that to be a mark of our success, because it means that they're happy, they're enjoying our programming, they want others to be a part of it. And just to put it in context, our population in particular is the least likely to graduate from college. Fewer than 2% of teen moms get a degree before age 30. And our graduation rate within 6 years is higher than the national average for any college student, whether or not you're parenting or not. So it's really important. Data is a huge piece of the puzzle for us. And lastly, I'll just say the qualitative feedback that you mentioned is really important for us. Hearing from our students, hearing them talk about this program, how much it means to them, the impact that it's had on them and their children, is just the most powerful way that we can really step back and see how are we doing as an organization.
That's powerful. Thank you. And it's intriguing, because I think both you and Rocio mentioned kind of liberating the data, as it were, too, because you have your scholar leaders who are taking a look. Rocio, you've got students who are determining what's happening with the virus and deciding they're going to create something to take action. It's a powerful way to make sure that the data keeps feeding. And I'm also hearing some kind of leading as well as lagging indicators, things that help you from a program perspective, but also to see outcomes. I imagine for your funders and others, decision makers, you need both of those, right? Powerful, thank you. So last but not least, Laura at Mi Casa, Su Casa. we mentioned already that you're connecting Hispanic college students to the campus community and the many ways in a holistic approach you're taking. Sometimes it's challenging when you have a holistic approach to service to kind of students to figure out what are the measures that actually tell you something as you look to go forward. So what kind of evidence of effectiveness do you use as you look to see the impact of Mi Casa, Su Casa?
Sure. So like all of the other ladies on the meeting have mentioned, we use multiple data points. And I think it's interesting as you try to do holistic work, you have to have some of that real minute picture and then also the really big picture. So of course we look at things like retention, success, and persistence. We look at graduation rates. We look at transfer rates. We don't want them to just be successful here. We want our students to be set up for success lifelong. And so we have those big data points, and we are seeing great success and movement in all of those areas with our Latino students. And then from that, we also look at the more granular level, the individual success rates, the experience they're having class to class, semester to semester, that helps build into those big surges and the big picture data. So I think it's a very complex picture when you're trying to do something as big as we are that touches as many students as we're touching, but it all tells a different part of the story.
Yeah. Thank you, Laura. I always appreciate, and I guess I kind of started a little bit more with the data. I know that data are the language of decision makers, and each of you made a very compelling case with your data, but also without negating that it really is about people. Mm-hmm. And I appreciate hearing that combination. I think that's what we have to make sure we're paying attention to, all of us, including those decision makers and the funders, to the kinds of work that you all are doing. So thank you for just giving us a hint. I know there's so much more. I had at least, I think, 4 data points from each of you that really stood out when I compared to the national average. And that's powerful. I hope that those who are listening are able to follow up and get more information about why your work is making a powerful difference. So, part of Examples of Excelencia is kind of unapologetically focusing on issues with the Latino lens. And for us, that's not to the exclusion of any other student. It's just acknowledging that, Latinos typically have been perceived as kind of a footnote or an aside if focused on it all. And yet you all are disaggregating your data. You have cultural competency and relevant efforts and strategies that are making a difference. So I guess maybe I'll start with you, Kim, and thinking about how do you balance targeting and working with your Latino students while you serve all of your students at U of Arizona and at Asems?
So we're really focused on working with students and in an individualized way. So we are meeting students where they are. We are recognizing that they're all coming with different experiences, different backgrounds and journeys. And so when you are connecting to students in that way, you're really tailoring the experience for them. So this happens to work very well for Latinx students because we are also validating, their journeys. We're validating their cultural experiences and the wealth of knowledge that they're coming in with. And so that might not be something that they really experience in a lot of places. And so because we create this warm and inclusive environment where they feel like they're family, I think that's why it makes such a difference with Latinx students, because that's what they're used to in their own communities and families.
Yeah, thank you. And that's important, right? It's not an either or, but you're able to serve them individually, which makes a difference overall. I think that's also the case. Nicole, you mentioned that, you're disaggregating your data, but you're also acknowledging you serve a population that's not exclusively or solely Latino. So how do you balance serving your Latino students with your other students that are also having need as teen parents?
Yeah, absolutely. As you said, we're open to all, but one thing that I think is really important, we make sure that our recruitment is intentionally equitable. And by that, I mean, we're located in the DC region, DC, Maryland, and Virginia. We are a regional program, which allows us to ensure we're engaging the Latino community within our region. And that's been really important. We also work with a range of partner nonprofits and high schools for our college readiness workshops, for our recruitment, and some of whom are working specifically with Latino students. And that those partnerships have been really key, really integral. We also, as you said, disaggregate data. And I think that's been really important for us to look at data and disaggregate by race and ethnicity to figure out what are the unique needs of our student groups, and to rise to the occasion to make sure that we're supporting them. And then building off of the last response, we also really believe in meeting students where they are. We don't have rigid policies that are not student-centered. I think that approach has really allowed us to adapt and be flexible and then meet the needs of all of our students and to cater to their unique experiences of Latino students as well as other student groups. And lastly, I'll say we have a strong core value of family at Generation Hope, and that it's who we are. We serve both parent and child, that's who we are as an organization, but it is a very warm, loving, there's tons of hugs when COVID isn't around, a community that we hope our Latino students feel very much a part of, and that I think is really important.
Yeah, this concept of increasingly people are talking more and more about familia and the matter that
yes,
hey, it's like not just relational, but there's kind of an intimate kind of connection, like there's a matter of trust that's involved, right? Yeah, thank you. That's really important as we think about serving all, but not apologizing for making sure Latinos are included in those efforts. Laura, from the perspective of what you're doing, I mean, you have a program that's called Mi Casa, Su Casa. That's pretty explicit in what you're doing there. So, but you're on the campus, and you don't just serve Latinos. How do you balance that work out?
Absolutely. So I think that the core tenets of that connection, of that relationship, of building an environment that says we are your college, we are here for you, has helped our Latino students, but also helped all of our other students. I think that a huge foundational piece of what we've been doing is taking the time to really get to know the student. We have the student-centered policies, we have the all those things we talk about, but unless I really know you, I'm not going to know how to best support you. And I think anytime that you create a culture where the faculty and staff want to and have the ability to really take that time to form personal connections, that's not going to just help Latino students. That's going to help every person that's on our campus. And that's what we've seen.
Yeah, thank you. That makes a difference, right? And having a program called Mi Casa, Su Casa doesn't prevent others from wanting to join either, right?
Right, absolutely.
That's important. And maybe speaking a little bit to the effort of recruitment and being intentional. So not exclusive, but intentional. Thank you. That's great. Now, Rocio, LLI is explicitly focused on Latinos. How do you balance that in the School of Social Work to make sure that what you're doing, which is explicitly targeted, is adding value to the School of Social Work and not just to the students you're serving?
Yes. The School of Social Work and the profession of social work has unfortunately, in general, focused on a deficit perspective for Latinos. It's a very, in a normative way to do social work. So when you have over 10% of the school now that are Latinos, you change the critical mass of the whole school. You change how classes are taught. You change who has what voice counts. You change how you approach the population. Social workers work with a large proportion of Latino families. So you need to change the profession. You need to change the profession to truly serve that. So we are open to everyone. And so if you want to be in the LLI and your Spanish is up to the part and you are willing to follow our curriculum, you are welcome. You don't have, to self-identify as Latino, although over 90% of our students are Latinos, but you don't have to be, you can be there. But so the change has been in the whole community, not only in the school, because many social workers, whether you want to work with Latinos or not, you are going to find them. They are going to be in your agency. How do you learn to serve the needs of that community? And something that is very good of working with social workers is that social workers want to do the right thing. That doesn't take a lot of convincing. So, and that also spills to the profession. Now the LLI has a national presence in social work. because they are seeing, hey, we can replicate that at the national level, because social workers want to do the right thing. That's the good thing of working with social workers.
Yes, that's great. Thank you. And important, because it's your program actually helps others as well. It's not just the program itself. That's a way of engaging. That's powerful. Thank you. Well, you know, we've talked about a lot of some of the positive. I know we just scratched the surface of things that are working, a little bit about the design of what you're doing. We also know that, especially in this time and age, but everywhere, trying to do a program that's student ready and student focused, that there are also challenges. And part of what we wanted to make sure to ask you all is to tell us just a little bit about that. You know, what are some of the challenges you faced with implementing and sustaining your program? If any, I venture to say that you at least had one, each of you in there, but let me start with you, Nicole. You know, you've also the founder of Generation Hope, and you've got this program, the Scholars Program. Can you just share with us some of the challenges you faced in trying to get the Scholars Program off the ground, and how you've tried to address that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one big one for us is the stigma of teen pregnancy and really the false narratives that teen parents can't go to college. And I remember starting Generation Hope and having funders say to me, you know, this is kind of pie in the sky, that, you know, teen parents are not going to be able in critical mass to get their college degrees. And so there's still a ton of stigma around teen pregnancy and around being a parenting college student that we still are working to address and overcome. Systemic racism within the higher ed field really reinforces the notion of who deserves to be in a college classroom and who doesn't. And that's something that we are working hard to address every day. I think being a woman of color, as the CEO of this organization, there are huge disparities in funding for leaders of colors of nonprofit organizations. Black and Latinx-led organizations receive only 4% of all funding. So, you know, for me to grow this organization over the past 10 years has been no small feat. I think also there's a narrative within the nonprofit field around your strength or your ability of the size of your impact is proportional to how many people you serve. You know, if you serve 3,000 students in a year, then you have more impact. In an after-school program, you have more impact than our organization that serves 100 in a year, but at the end of the program, they get a college degree. And so really helping funders to understand the impact is not just in numbers. And you know, we know the ROI on a college degree is huge. And I would just say, you know, we are not a campus-based program. We actually support teen parents who are attending 20 different 2- and 4-year schools across the DC metro region. And so, you know, that's not easy either. For those of you who are at a college campus, you know that each one is unique and has different things to navigate. And then lastly, I would say immigration challenges have been huge for our Latino population over the past several years. Having all of the issues with DACA has been really difficult and challenging, but we've been really proud of our dreamers and their ability to continue, and we're standing by them in that.
Wonderful, thank you. I say wonderful because, you know, I don't mean it like it's great that you have challenges, but part of what we hear repeatedly is that those aren't limiting you, it's finding a way to address them on behalf of your community and the students you're trying to serve. I think that's critical point. So many who encounter challenges and barriers aren't able to supersede and go forward. And we've got some programs here that are still in it. I would imagine these challenges have not gone away, Nicole.
No.
That right, which makes sense. It absolutely makes sense, and I appreciate that. Laura, how about yourself? I mean, you've got this program that you guys have put in place, you and your team, and challenges that you face because you are on a college campus and a community college, right?
Right, absolutely. So I think our biggest challenge has been as we have tried to prepare for the future. So one of the really neat things that I'm so proud of with the Casa program is it's very grassroots. It was a group of faculty and staff that got together and wanted to do something different and started the majority of these programs and initiatives on their own. And then through their work, we were able to secure a Title V grant to help kind of take it to the next level. And part of that Title V grant, we knew from the beginning, though, that anything we wanted to do big, we had to plan for the future. How do we keep it going and maintain the momentum? And so part of the grant was written to allow for an endowment, that we would start raising money from the get-go to help secure these things for the long haul, and the Department of Education would match a portion of what we were able to raise. Then fall of 2017, we were hit by Hurricane Harvey. And instead of having the first week of fall classes, we were serving as a shelter for the members of our community that had been evacuated. And so that changed everything with respect to fundraising, reaching out to donors. Those conversations were still happening, but now we weren't trying to build for the future of our program. Now we were trying to help our families and our students and our community rebuild their lives. And so as we are now heading into fall 2020, and the last year of our Title V grant and the last year of our chance to get our match from the Department of Education, we have made amazing strides with our work, but we have not made strides in that endowment and getting money set aside for the future like we had hoped. But all those efforts went to other very necessary things that needed to happen after Hurricane Harvey.
Right, and now you've got COVID-19 on top of everything.
Exactly.
Right, and what needs there. And so even natural disasters and things outside of your control, not everything that you control in a powerful way. So thank you. I mean, those are, I think that's real for many of us who are involved in programs and organizations trying to serve our community, and exacerbated because our students face challenges and families face challenges as well. You're trying to mitigate. That's powerful. Thank you. Rocio, you know, LLI has grown and is evolving and continues. I so appreciate one of the data points you shared is that 100% of your graduates have secured full-time positions in their work. But I know you face some challenges in even getting to that point and where you are. What would you highlight as probably your top 1 or 2 challenges that you've had to address or are addressing?
I'm going to highlight too, one of the big challenges is to secure funding for my students. Yeah. I'm not in a Hispanic serving institutions. I'm not in a very diverse institution. So it takes a lot of effort to convince, you know, to get the resources that my students, I'm not going to say need, deserve. My institution is very lucky to have the LLI here. And they are changing who we are. So that's one thing. The other thing is more structural, and I'm gonna take advantage and I'm going to answer to one chat question that I got that is right on point, and it's licensure. We are a professional school, so we have to respond to the rules and regulations of the Council of Social Work Education. You need your license, right? To be a professional. We're a professional school. So you have at the national level a curriculum and an exam that does not necessarily respond to Latinos and the way, you know, we work with the communities. So you kind of have to do 2 trainings. The trainings to comply with everything you need to become a social worker, and then the training you actually need to be effective working with the communities. And the question said, what do you do? Because there is a lot of data, and this is to you, that shows that Latinos don't pass the licensure exam to become social worker at a rate that is comparable to the white students. My students do. Why? Because we are very aware of that data and we make that double preparation. But there is hope. The Council of Social Work Education invited me to be part of a working group to change the exam and other things at the national level. So it actually reflects social work with Latinos, not only social work with, you know, one population. So, and I can go on and on, but it's good to keep in mind the needs of the students in the institution, but also social work with the Latinos at the national level, which is a key for us in the LLI.
I love that we're all, you're all change agents as well, not sitting down and waiting for things to happen. So getting involved in actually changing the licensure exam, the kind of things that Nicole talks about day in and day out, that they're doing policy and advocacy, not just waiting and fundraising. And Laura as well, adapting and serving the community, but also making sure that you've got a strong program that's concurrent to those things. Those are all super powerful as we think about what it takes to make the kind of difference we all care about, and comes with challenges. Kimberly, I'll ask you that question as well. So you're at a large university, R1, and you've got strong faculty and staff and others. What are some of the challenges you've had to face to get Asems going and making sure that you're serving your students well?
So yes, University of Arizona, it's a large Research One university. And when we first started this program, one of the reasons was because we saw the ways that faculty would choose students to do research in their groups. And they would only select students that had the top grades, students that were super proactive, coming to them in their office hours, having had already read their research articles. And we saw this gap because many of the students that we were seeing in our undergraduate research programs who were from underrepresented backgrounds or who were first-gen students, they didn't necessarily know all these little these ways to navigate and get into these experiences and build these relationships. And the U of A has sometimes they'll talk about the high percentage of students that have graduated with research experiences. However, so many students have already left the institution by the time they get to their senior year. And so we know that actually we are not meeting the needs of students to get into research. And so it was challenging at first to convince faculty why these students should shadow in their labs, but when they get to know them and they build a relationship with them, they get to know the passion that they have, the skills that they have, the focus that they have, and the resiliency that they have to do research, and how critical that is. And so the other challenge, though, is that there's a limit to the number of research experiences that are out there. There's 11,000 STEM students at the U of A, and there's just not enough of a capacity yet to reach all of those students. And so one thing that I have been working on, I got some funding from the provost to develop this a CURE training institute. I partnered with CureNet so that we could have more course-based undergraduate research experiences for first-year students and sophomores. So that all students get to develop this STEM identity, that they get to understand what it is like to actually be like a scientist, and to find research that's actually relevant to their own interests, something that they're where they can intertwine their identities.
Right.
So
powerful. Yeah. And I appreciate each of you's kind of shared, not just shared challenges, but how you've addressed them and how you're addressing them. So this is about getting it done in a critical way. So not letting the challenges stop you overall. So let me flip it back another direction, right? So if you were able to get a significant infusion of funding, funder came to you and said, hey, we heard you're doing really good work. What would you choose to invest in your program with a new influx of money? If you had to, because always money, there's never enough. How do you prioritize? So what would you choose to invest in if you got a new infusion of resources? Maybe I'll start with you, Kimberly. What would you do if you got a benefactor that said, here's some money to do what you feel is right? What would you prioritize?
So, our program in its current model, it's limited in capacity. We can't serve all students that are pursuing STEM at the U of A. However, one very important element of our program is the training that we are doing for our staff and peer mentors and faculty mentors on and delivering and being culturally responsive and delivering this strength-based mentoring. We recently received a NSF STEM grant, so we're developing and actually piloted this semester this inclusive mentoring program for STEM faculty. And I think if we could invest more in that, because we only have 8 faculty that are going through that right now. It's a partnership with Pima Community College, and since we only can have 8 faculty, if we're able to expand that so that more faculty and advisors and staff are trained how to work with students in a way that actually reinforces their strengths, reinforces their talents, especially during their first year, so that we don't have faculty and advisors and staff who are creating more damage and harm to the students and their self-esteem during the first year when they have just as much talent to persist and succeed as anybody else. And we need to be able to reward the staff and faculty who are actually creating this warm, inclusive environment for students during their first year. So being able to put more resources into that type of training and to grow that training to make it more accessible and expand it for more people to participate. I think that would have the greatest impact.
Yeah, to get to some of the scale that you were talking about there, which is important. Thank you. Yes. Nicole, you were able to get a new infusion of resources and many things that you do. What would you choose to invest in?
This is an easy question.
Okay. I love it.
We have been doing incredible work with an incredible team in the DC area for the past 10 years. And now we really are looking to broaden our impact across the country. And so an infusion of funding for us would go to a 3-pronged approach to that. And that would be, our first is we're launching a new technical assistance program for colleges and universities across the country that helps them to better support parenting college students. We're really excited about that. Second is the policy and advocacy agenda that you mentioned, and that will be driven by student parents. Again, really looking at them as the experts and allowing us to identify legislation that either hinders or accelerates their success in post-secondary. And then the third is scaling our direct services. Since I started Generation Hope, the number one question we get from people is, when are you coming to my city, my community, my state? And so we're at a point where we're ready to start to scale our direct services and look at other cities and regions.
That is pretty easy. I guess you've thought about it too, huh? That's great, Nicole. Thank you. So, Rocio, if you got a new infusion, what would you do with those resources?
Easy for me too. First, tuition. My students are not are not like the other students, in the sense that I have many students that are first-gen college students, and also are parents, have families. So tuition, my dream is that they come here tuition free. Second, I need money for their day-to-day. Life happens. So I have people, now with the virus, a lot of my students lost their jobs. They cannot buy a laptop. So I spend all day, as I say, I run this on favors, calling people. I need money for a laptop. This student got evicted. So we need to understand that even though they are grad students and they are adults, they are students with hardship financial needs, besides their tuition, and their life happens for them, and they have to eat every day, and we need to attend to that. Yeah. Third, I want them to be able to capitalize on all the formation opportunities that there in social work. There is a conference, I want to be able to send them. There is something they want to attend, I want to be able to send them. Fourth, I have a cadre of people that I use for the seminars, especially Latinos that are in the field. I want to be able to pay them for their time, So that I want to say, come here, your time is valuable. So I am very fortunate to come with countless people that believe in this dream, and they are giving me time and effort, asking for nothing. And I think it's time that to put support there, so it's not run on this Herculean effort of every day to attend to the needs of my students. They deserve it.
Yeah, definitely makes sense. I love how you guys are able to take it 3 or 4 things right off. We got to find ways to get those resources to you all, definitely. Laura, I know you said you're near the end of a 5-year Title V grant. If you got a new infusion of resources, what would you all choose to invest in for Mi Casa, Su Casa?
We would definitely go for that endowment, especially when the Department of Education is going to match some of it, right? So that would really be priority one. And it really is just about building for the future. We know we're doing great things. We have the data to support that. We know we're on to something good. So how do we make sure we can keep it moving forward and just expand it, as everyone else had mentioned? You know, we serve just over 13,000 students at North Harris. The majority of those are Latino students. And right now we have an amazing, again, grassroots program that our faculty and staff have developed that I know touches all of our students in some capacity. But an infusion of resources would allow us to take that from just knowing you had one touch to having multiple touch points, and those success rates and those success metrics that we already have, they can only get better.
Yeah, that's powerful. Thank you. Let's hope. We've got to, well, not just hope, we've got to take action to make sure some of those resources become available. Let's hope bringing attention to your good work can help with some of that. So as I said, we've got a national audience here who's paying attention, some who are at associations, some who are at institutions directly in program staff. We've got, we know that we've got some funders that are paying attention to what's happening overall here, and some policy and research folks. So let me ask one thing. You know, at Excellency, we talk about what works and evidence-based practices. We don't necessarily say best practice, because, you know, from a research perspective, you want to know what's replicable, what's scalable, and how you approach that. But if you could identify something about your program that you think could be replicable elsewhere, and I'm going to start with Nicole, because you've already said that there are people reaching out to you saying they want to replicate some of what you're doing. But what do you think, Nicole, the Scholars Program is something that could be replicated, whether you're in Arkansas or New York or Ohio or Georgia, of the things that you do? What's replicable?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is that it's more than just a one-time investment of a child care center or a singular program at an institution or an organization. It's really about applying a student-parent lens to everything that you do across your organization or institution. You know, we're successful at Generation Hope because we consider the needs and experiences of parenting students in everything that we do, every policy that we make, every decision. It's not an afterthought. Another would be one-on-one support is so critical and so key. Having a go-to person on campus within the organization who understands the unique needs of parenting college students and supports them directly is really important. Involving student-parent voice in what you do, how you create. You know, making spaces and events family-friendly in your organization on your college campus. We released a survey in May that showed that 1/3 of all student parents saw very few, if no, family-friendly characteristics on their campuses. That's things like diaper changing stations. It could be parenting college students in your marketing collateral. Making sure that schedules for students with children are really taken into consideration when you're creating office hours, when you're creating financial aid office hours and things like that. A big one for higher ed is collect the parenting status of your students, collect that data. Most colleges and universities do not know how many parenting college students they have. We know it's a significant population. About 22% of all undergraduate college students are parenting. 21% of all Latino students are parenting, but most colleges are not collecting that data. So collect the data. We know what gets measured gets prioritized, so it's really important. And then I think lastly, student-parent work is race equity work. And so, you know, committing to race equity, student-parent work, you know, we know that student parents are more likely to be students of color. So really connecting this work with your DEI initiatives is really important. If we want to increase graduation rates for Latino students, we have to ensure we're supporting and investing in parenting college students. That really goes hand in hand. So those are some things that I think are replicable.
There's a lot there that's replicable. That's good. That's why there's so many that want you to come there too. Rocio, you say you work at the national level with the social work overall. Are there things about what you're doing at LLI that are replicable?
Right from the start, one thing that is replicable is our curriculum. How are we training our social workers to work with Latinos? How we decolonize the way we are training professionals. So, and we have created a whole series of training exercises, seminars, curriculum that can be easily replicable in other places. Also, the cohort model. The cohort model is very powerful for students to enter education as a group. having those classes where they are at the center, where their life, their experiences, when I like to put it this way, they don't have to leave anything at the door to enter the educational space. They enter as who they are. So the cohort model, the one-on-one key, I agree, to have the person on campus. They have Jimena and me on a spill dive. We are always available if they need. And because we know them well, there is nothing that is out of the table that they can discuss to establish that trusting relationship. So that comes with the cohort model.
Okay, great. Kimberly, Asems, are there things that you're doing that you think are replicable?
So I think the structured cohort courses that we have for students, it's a pathway where they can move through the university together as a community. I've seen these freshman interest groups at other universities. That's one model where we can grow. One element of our program is kind of using that, where students are going through the universities as a community. There's also many more universities are implementing and incorporating into their curriculum research into the gateway courses, and also other ways of expanding access to research. But really training the faculty and advisors on how to mentor in a way and how to interact with in a way that's really going to build student self-esteem and finding ways to reduce implicit bias, to eliminate microaggressions that students experience on a daily basis, and just more training on about how to be affirming in the student's experience. So I think those are definitely some things that are replicable.
Yes. I think some of the challenges, it's easy to say, it's hard to do. You think of some of what Nicole was saying about the systemic racism and the challenges we face, right? And you definitely see that in institutions of longstanding. They were built on some of that structural inequity, but those are powerful ways to address it. And then last but not least, Laura, what you're doing at Mi Casa Su Casa is replicable from your perspective?
All of it. So with our program, we have about 10 different.
This is everybody's casa.
Exactly. We are. Our casa is big enough for everyone. So we have about 10 different activities that are comprised within our initiatives in the program, and any one of them could be replicable at any institution. And I think what makes the difference, though, is that it's that broad-based involvement. It's having that all levels of the campus, all areas of the campus are part of the planning and implementation of those activities. And I think that's where the secret in our success lies. So, we're not doing anything that's truly out of the ordinary. We have our interdisciplinary learning lounges. We have advising and tutoring and transition services for transfer students. We have culturally relevant pedagogy and faculty development that occurs. But I think that the difference, the secret is the planning of those and having that broad-based group of faculty and staff and leaders, all with that common purpose that really makes the difference.
Well, it's interesting. Thank you all. I know this is hard. I know we've got a hard stop and we've got about 3 minutes, but what I'm hearing too is this, the opportunity that you all have raised in creating a space for this work. And while it's not necessarily rocket science, it's not happening everywhere, right? I mean, you all are, and your colleagues who were finalists are the exceptions to the norm. And that creates an opportunity, but also a challenge because, as you said, Laura, and I think all of you have said, so much of what you're doing is replicable. How is it that we are making sure that we are actually replicating to benefit the students we are? Things like being student-centered and student-ready, you've all mentioned that. Being holistic, and not just approaching one part of it. Being flexible and adaptable, whether it's natural disasters or life situation changes for those you serve. You're talking about ability to be flexible. Sometimes has implications on the data, and sometimes data are outmoded and not approaching it, but it's also expectations of funders and decision makers of what they're gonna get from your programs. And you've shared with us some of the challenges, some of the opportunities if resources come in, the things that you believe are making a difference. Let me just pause it to those who are paying attention here and participating with us. This scratches the surface of such the critical work that our colleagues are doing. These four, they're doing such powerful work, and others. I hope that you will continue to engage with us. We have a commitment to make sure that the work of these four and the others that are making a difference, that we bring greater attention to it. I appreciate the time you've spent with us. We know there's so much more we can say. Our commitment is to see how we can continue to engage at a national dialogue about the kind of work each of you are doing and engage more. I know we have a couple of questions that have popped up. I was trying to prep with a lot of those questions, trying to incorporate some of those. I didn't get to all of them, unfortunately. We want to continue this dialogue and thank you for the work you guys do day in and day out that makes such a difference. I hope others who are listening are paying attention to see what's possible when you have the kind of commitment and will that we see with these 4 leaders that have been with us and generous with their time, and hope that that can continue to seed the good work by others and reinforce those of you who are out in the trenches and feeling like no one else is doing it, to know that you're part of a common cause. So thank you, the 4 of you, for your time and sharing a little bit about your story. We look forward to continuing to engage and bringing attention to your good work. Thank you all so very much. Really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you all. I think we're going to